I'm J.D. Stillwater, and I share leadership for today's service with Dorothy Brown, my poetry mentor and co-conspirator in creating this service. She is a joy to work with. She doesn't know I'm saying this. And if you have ever experienced the power of poetry, the next hour, well, you'll see. Whether you are a member or a visitor joining us in person, or you're here virtually this morning, we're really glad that you decided to join us. For those online, a Zoom online coffee hour will follow starting at 11:30. And for those here in person, we will have coffee hour in the common room downstairs. Please speak with Mike McCullough if you're interested in helping with coffee hour. It turns out it takes a village to caffeinate UUs. In the spirit of the transformative power of community in all of its forms, welcome. Whoever you are, wherever you live, whomever you love, whatever you do for a living, you are welcome at the Unitarian Church of Harrisburg and to all of its activities.
It's on now. Thank you. Our opening joyous noise is number 347, Gather the Spirit. And Leanne will play a few bars so you can get to know it. Gather the Spirit, harvest the path. Our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united.
if, when we lit the chalice, your hair burst into flame, how we would cry out? What if, when we lit the chalice, your heart burst into flame? Wake up, cry out. Today our poetry service will have mostly long poems rather than many short poems. Thank you. We thought that it would better speak to the themes that we're wanting to stress today. What is it that you love? Whom do you love with your whole heart? What things of the world do you give your time and energy to? What are you most grateful for? Today, our poetry centers on these themes, these questions, which may be the most crucial questions of your life. Whom do you love? What do you love? In this simple world, in this complicated world, where does your love go?
Is it working? Is it on? Your little hands wrapped around my finger, and it's so quiet in the world tonight. Your little eyelids flutter 'cause you're dreaming, so I tuck you in, turn on your favorite nightlight. To you, everything's funny. You got nothing to regret. I'd give all I have, honey, if you could stay like that. Oh, darling, don't you ever grow, don't you ever grow. Just stay this little. Oh, darling, don't you ever grow, don't you ever grow. Could stay this simple. I won't let nobody hurt you, won't let no one break your heart, and no one will desert you. Just try to never grow up. Never grow up. You're in the car on the way to the movies, and you're mortified your mom's dropping you off. At 14, there's just so much you can't do, and you can't wait to move out someday and call your own shots. Don't make her drop you off around the block. Remember that she's getting older too, and don't lose the way that you dance around in your PJs getting ready for school. Oh, darling, don't you ever grow up, don't you ever grow up. Just stay this little. Oh, darling, don't you ever grow up, don't you ever grow up. Could stay this simple, and no one's ever burned you, nothing's ever left you scarred. And even though you want to, just try to never grow up. Take pictures in your mind of your childhood room. Memorize what it sounded like when your dad gets home. Remember the footsteps, remember the words said in all your little brother's favorite songs. I just realized everything I had is someday gonna be gone. So here I am in my new apartment in a big city. They just dropped me off. So much colder than I thought it would be, so I tuck myself in and turn my nightlight on. Wish I'd never grown up. I wish I'd never grown up. Oh, I don't wanna grow up. Wish I never grown up, could still be little. Oh, I don't wanna grow up. Wish I never grown up, it could still be simple. Oh, darling, don't you ever grow up. Don't you ever grow up. Just stay this little. Oh, darling, don't you ever grow up. Don't you ever grow up. Could stay this simple. Won't let nobody hurt you. Won't let no one break your heart. Even though you want to, please try to never grow up. Oh, don't you ever grow up. Oh, never grow up. Just never grow up.
So I'm Hannah Belser. I am filling in for the RE guys, gals. Can I see the hands of the children out here? Okay, would you like to come up front? Because I'm doing some poetry that has some artwork with it. Come on up here. Oops. So now I went down there. JD and I were talking before. There we go. Oh, I have it. I have it now. So, on the theme of who we love and where do we love and what do we love. Did I get that, Dorothy? It's children that I love. I taught for 35 or more years. It's children that we all love, especially if you have your own children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So there's a special poet I like. His name is Shel Silverstein. Have you ever heard that name? Have you ever heard that name, Shel Silverstein? Yeah. This is a book from the beginning of the first of his poems. Well Loved. And I have 3 short poems I want to read to you because they're kids. They don't need the long ones till they get older. And the cool thing about Shel Silverstein is there's always artwork. He always draws things that go with the poems. So the first one's called The Sitter. Mrs. McTwitter, the babysitter. Have you ever had a babysitter? No? Yes? It's somebody who comes in when your mom or dad go out for a date or shopping or something. Okay. Mrs. McTwitter, the babysitter, I think she's a little bit crazy. She thinks a babysitter is supposed to sit upon the baby. You see that one? You can use your imagination. The next poem is called The Prayer of the Selfish Child. What does selfish mean? Do you know? Alone. Tell me what you said. And she said alone. He says they only care about themselves. Sometimes when they get like that, they end up being alone. Jack, do you know? Go ahead. Prayer of the Selfish Child. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my toys to break, so none of the other kids can use them. Amen. One thing I love about this poet, Shel Silverstein, is he's a little bit naughty in some of his poems. Sometimes a lot naughty. Those 2 are what I might call naughty ones. All right. Here's the last one. It's called The Little Boy and the Old Man. Said the little boy, sometimes I drop my spoon. Said the little old man, I do that too. The little boy whispered, I wet my pants. I do that too, laughed the little old man. Said the little boy, "I often cry." The old man nodded. "So do I. But worst of all," said the boy, "it seems like grown-ups don't pay attention to me." And he felt, I think I could do this. And he felt the warmth of a wrinkled old hand. "I know what you mean," said the little old man. Do you have a favorite one of those? No? All right. Why don't you go back? I think we're going to sing you down to your classrooms. Thank you.
You feel love every day. May your light, shining bright, transform the world with love.
Am I holding on? Wait, got it. So the poem Dorothy's asked me to read is called Thanking My Mother for Piano Lessons. A bit of this poem is history for me, but a good share of it is not. So I do have to thank both my mother and father for giving me piano lessons right after I first touched the piano and learned a little song in 2nd grade. So this one goes over the narrator's life. Thanking my mother for piano lessons. The relief of putting your fingers on the keyboard as if you were walking on the beach and found a diamond as big as a shoe. As if you had eluded the man in the dark hat who had been following you all week. The relief of putting your fingers on the keyboard, playing the chords of Beethoven, Bach, Chopin, in an afternoon when I had no one to talk to, when the magazine advertisement forms of soft sweaters and clean, shining Republican middle-class hair walked into carpeted houses and left me alone with bare floors and a few books. I want to thank my mother for working every day in a drab office, in garages and water companies, writing delicate bookkeeper's ledgers alone, with no man to look at her face, her body, her prematurely white hair in love. I want to thank my mother for working and always paying for my piano lessons before she paid the Bank of America loan or bought the groceries or had our old rattling Ford repaired. I was a quiet child. Afraid of walking into a store alone, afraid of the water, the sun, the dirty weeds in backyards, afraid of my mother's bad breath, and afraid of my father's occasional visits home, knowing he would leave again, afraid of not having any money, afraid of my clumsy body that I knew no one would ever love. But I played my way on the old upright piano obtained for $10, played my way through fear, through ugliness, through growing up in a world of dime store purchases, and a desire to love a loveless world. I played my way through honors in school, the only place I could talk, in the classroom, or at my piano lessons, Mrs. Hillhouse's canary always singing the most of my talents, as if I had thrown some part of my body away upon entering her house, and was now searching every ivory case of the keyboard, slipping my fingers over black ridges and around smooth rocks. I played my way from age to age, for they all seemed ageless, or perhaps always old and lonely, wanting only one thing, surrounded by the dusty, bitter-smelling leaves of orange trees, wanting only to be touched by a man who loved me, who would be there every night, to put his large, strong hand over my shoulder, whose hips I would wake up against in the morning, whose mustaches might brush a face asleep, dreaming of pianos that made the sound of Mozart and Schubert without demanding that life suck everything out of you each day, without demanding the emptiness of a timid little life. I want to thank my mother for letting me wake her up sometimes at 6 in the morning when I practice my lessons, and for making sure I had a piano to lay my school books down on every afternoon. I haven't touched the piano in 10 years, perhaps in fear that what little love I've been able to pick like lint out of the corners of pockets will get lost, slide away into the terribly empty cavern of me if I ever open it all the way up again. Love is about a man with a mustache, gently holding me every night, always being there when I need to touch him. He could not know the painfully loud music from the past that his loving stops from pounding, banging, battering through my brain, which does its best to destroy the precarious gray matter when I'm alone. He does not hear Mrs. Hillhouse's canary singing for me, liking the sound of my lesson this week, telling me, confirming what my teacher says, that I have a gift for the piano few of her other pupils had. When I touch the man I love, I want to thank my mother for giving me piano lessons all those years, keeping the memory of Beethoven, a deaf, tortured man, in mind, of the beauty that can come from even an ugly past.
My favorite poet is Ross Gay, a man named Ross Gay. And this is an excerpt from his poem, Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. And it is a catalog. It runs on for page after page after page. Reading the entire thing would take at least 15 minutes. So this is a severely reduced excerpt. This is a trailer. This is a teaser. And if you like what's coming, I strongly encourage you to look up and give yourself the gift of time to read Ross Gay's Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude. Friends, will you bear with me today, for I have awakened from a dream in which a robin made with its shabby wings a kind of veil, behind which it shimmied and stomped something from the south of Spain. Its breast aflare, looking me dead in the eye, the bird shuffling its little talons left, then right, by which I knew upon waking it was telling me in no uncertain terms to bellow forth the tubas and sousaphones, the whole rusty brass band of gratitude, not quite dormant in my belly. Hear ye, I am here to holler that I have hauled tons, by which I don't mean lots, I mean tons of cow shit, and stood ankle deep in swales of maggots swirling the spent beer grains the brewery man was good enough to dump off, holding his nose, for they smell very bad, but make the compost writhe, giddy, and lick its lips. Twirling dung with my pitchfork again and again with hundreds and hundreds of other people, we dreamt an orchard this way, furrowing our brows and hauling our wheelbarrows and sweating through our shirts. And 2 years later, there was a party at which trees were sunk into the well-fed earth, one of which, a Liberty apple, after being watered in, was tamped by a baby, barefoot, with a bow hanging in her hair, biting her lip in her joyous work. And friends, This is the realest place I know. It makes me squirm like a worm. I am so grateful. You could ride your bike there, or roller skate, or catch the bus. It will make you gasp. It might make you want to stay alive, even. Thank you. Oh, thank you. And thank you, too. And thanks for the corduroy couch I have put you on. Put your feet up, for I can feel this is going to be long. I can't stop my gratitude, which includes, dear reader, you for staying here with me, for moving your lips just so as I speak. Here is a cup of tea. I have spooned honey into it. Thank you to the quick and gentle flocking of men, to the old lady falling down on the corner of Fairmont and 18th, holding patiently with the softest parts of their hands her cane and purple hat, gathering for her the contents of her purse. Thank you, the cockeyed court on which, in a half-court 3-on-3, we old heads made of some runny-nosed kids a shambles. And the 61-year-old, after flipping a reverse layup off a backdoor cut from my no-look pass to seal the game, ripped off his shirt and threw punches at the gods and hollered at the kids to admire the pacemaker scar grinning across his chest. Thank you, the glad accordion's wheeze in the chest. Thank you, the bagpipes. Thank you, the baggie of dreadlocks I found in a drawer while washing and folding the clothes of our murdered friend. Thank you, the way before he died, he held his hands open to us, for coming back in a waft of incense, or in the shape of a boy in another city looking from between his mother's legs. Thank you, the ancestor who loved you before she knew you by smuggling seeds into her braid for the long journey, who loved you before he knew you by putting a walnut tree in the ground, who loved you before she knew you by not slaughtering the land. Thank you, who did not bulldoze the ancient grove of dates and olives, who sailed his keys into the ocean and walked softly home, who did not fire, who did not plunge the head into the toilet, who said, "Stop, don't do that," who volunteered the way a plant is called a volunteer, like the plum tree that marched beside the raised bed in my garden. Nary a bayonet, nary an army, nary a nation. Thank you, again you, for hanging tight, dear friend. I know I can be long-winded sometimes. I want so badly to rub the sponge of gratitude over every last thing, including you, which, yes, awkward, the suds in your ear and armpit, the little sparkling gem slipping into your eye. Soon it will be over. Which is precisely what the child in my dream said, holding my hand, pointing at the roiling sea and the sky, hurtling our way like so many buffalo, who said, "It's much worse than we think, and sooner." To whom I said, "No duh, child in my dreams. What do you think this singing and shuddering is? What this screaming and reaching and dancing and crying is, other than loving what every second goes away? Goodbye, I mean to say. And thank you every day." Ross Gay. Joys and sorrows. We invite you to share a joy, a sorrow, or a concern. For those online, please feel free to type your concern in the chat, and one of our techs will prepare a slip to share. For those here in person, we invite you to come forward and light a candle or put a stone into the water, or to write a message to be shared on the slips of paper over here. If a message is written, please indicate on it if you do or don't wish for your message to be shared out loud from up here. And just to keep the flow moving smoothly, please come up the middle aisle and go back to your seats by the side ones. Spoken or unspoken, your joy, sorrow, or concern is held in our thoughts and prayers. It seems it has been a busy week in our lives. There are quite a few this morning, both joys, concerns, and sorrows. I have one. I have both a concern and a sorrow. Today is Transgender Day of Remembrance, a day on which we remember those who we hold tenderly our memories of those whose simple courage to be themselves has cost them their lives. And as you may know, last night some person walked into an LGBTQ bar in Colorado Springs and started shooting. So it's not over. It'd be nice if we could someday have, and I hope we will, have a Transgender Day of Remembrance when we're not adding to the list of people we need to remember. Mimi Hanshaw writes that she's recovering nicely after a lumpectomy on Thursday. They'll know, she and Jim will know in about a week if there is any lymph node involvement. Sarita writes, my concern is I won't have a local active participant to be with me during my kidney transplant journey. We wish you all the best with that, Sarita. Joyce Stoltzfus writes, thankful for the inspiration of the poetry shared today. Don Brown expresses a concern. On July 17th, he made a presentation at COP27 in Egypt on why ethical principles that nations agreed would guide their responses to climate change have failed to gain any traction. Principles including no harm, an acceptable definition of equity, promises to protect human rights, and several others. And he writes that the cause is the failure to heed Adam Smith's warning that merchants would ruthlessly scheme against the public interest if allowed to do so. Margie writes, Alex, and she made clear to note that this is a joy, Alex and her husband Colby Rigg are expecting a baby this summer. And then Kathy Stewart shares that all our thoughts and love are greatly appreciated from others in this congregation. As we observe some companionable silence together, we'll release one more stone and light one more candle for all those joys and sorrows and concerns held silently in our hearts.
We don't know too many Turkish poets. We might not know any Turkish poets, but I do. One I love is Nazım Hikmet, who spent his life in exile or in prison because of his political views. He was one of those early communist idealists who thought maybe we could have a brotherhood of man. But what Nazım Hikmet got right was his appreciation of every single common thing. Things we take for granted, things we don't even notice. Common things, when you know you're going to lose them, are the things that finally matter. Things I Didn't Know I Loved by Nazım Hikmet. It's 1962, March 28th. I'm sitting by the window on the Prague-Berlin train. Night is falling. I never knew I liked night descending like a tired bird on a smoky, wet plain. I don't like comparing night to a tired bird. I never knew I loved the earth. Can someone who's never worked the earth love it? I've never worked the earth. It must be my only platonic love. And here I've loved rivers all this time, whether motionless they curl, circling the hills, European hills crowned with chateaus, or whether stretched out flat as the eye can see. I didn't know I loved the sky, cloudy or clear. In prison, I translated both volumes of War and Peace into Turkish. I hear voices from the yard, not the sky. The guards are beating someone again. I didn't know I loved trees. Bare beaches near Moscow, they come upon me in winter, noble and modest. Beaches are Russian, the way poplars are Turkish. I never knew I loved roads, even the asphalt kind. Bandits stopped me on the red road between Belu and Garaday when I was 18. Apart from my life, there was nothing in the wagon they could take. And at 18, our lives are what we value the least. I've written this somewhere before. Wading through a dark, muddy street, I'm going to a shadow play Ramazan night in Istanbul, holding my grandfather's hand. My grandfather has on a fez and is wearing the fur coat with the sable collar over his robe. There's a lantern in the servant's hand, and I can't contain myself for joy. Flowers come to mind for some reason: poppies, cactuses. In the jonquil garden of Istanbul, I kissed Marika, fresh almonds on her breath. I was 17. My heart on a swing touched the sky. I didn't know I loved flowers. Friends sent me 3 red carnations in prison. I just remembered the stars. I love them too, whether I'm floored watching them from below or flying at their side. Snow flashes in front of my eyes, both heavy, wet, steady snow and the dry, whirling kind. I didn't know I liked snow. I never knew I loved the sun, even when setting cherry red like now. In Istanbul, sometimes it sets in postcard colors, but you aren't about to paint it that way. I didn't know I loved the sea, or how much. I didn't know I loved clouds, whether I'm up above them or whether they look like shaggy giants or shaggy white beasts. Moonlight, the falsest, most languid, most petty bourgeois, strikes me. I like it. I didn't know I liked rain, whether it's falling like a fine net or splattering against the glass. The train plunges on through the pitch black night. I never knew I liked the night pitch black. Sparks fly from the engine. I didn't know I liked sparks. I didn't know I loved so many things, and I had to wait until 60 to find it out, sitting by the window on the Prague-Berlin train, watching the world disappear as if on a journey of no return. Quiet now in your mind. Close your eyes and meditate, maybe on the things you're thankful for, while I read a short poem. To say nothing but thank you. All day I try to say nothing but thank you, breathe the syllables in and out with every step I take through the rooms of my house and outside into a profusion of shaggy-headed dandelions in the garden, where the tulips' black stamens shake in their crimson cups. I am saying thank you, yes, to this burgeoning spring and to the cold wind of its changes. I am saying thank you as I remember who I am, a person learning to praise something as small as dandelion petals floating on the surface of a bowl of vegetable soup, my happy, savoring tongue.
Our next joyous noise is hymn number 329, Life Has Loveliness to Sell. Because this is a new hymn for us, Leanne will play it through completely so you understand how it goes.
Guess there's a reason we don't do that one very often. All those 2/4 measures stuck in there. It's like, wait, where are we? Where are we? Thank you for keeping us on track as we stumbled through. The Unitarian Church of Harrisburg is, as always, a freely gathered church of free people. The church is created, sustained, and supported by you, all of us. Each month we share half of our Sunday plate with a local nonprofit organization. And for the month of November, we're sharing the plate with the Ecumenical Food Pantry. For 50 years, the Ecumenical Food Pantry has worked to meet the emergency food needs of people in our area. For those who wish to contribute online, please see the email with the link for today's service or visit uchbg.org. I think there's a button right on the homepage for donations. There are several options for contributing there. For those here in the sanctuary, today's ushers will bring the collection plates. Your financial support and commitment really matter. Please consider giving what you're able.
And now for our final joyous noise, one that we all know, or we hope we know, called 311, Let It Be a Dance. Please rise in body or in spirit as you are able and willing. Also, because this is a dance song, you should sway a bit. Let it be a dance we do, and may I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. And may I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too.
All right, if you'll be seated, please. It says the closing hymn, but it's not the closing hymn. It's the last hymn. Jim Hanshaw, who tested positive for COVID, he was supposed to be here to read selections from Walt Whitman, but he has them on a recording for you. Selections from Walt Whitman. All right, if you'll be seated, please. It says the
I am
closing hymn,
thankful
but
to
it's
be
not
able to
the
recite
closing
my
hymn.
poem this morning,
It's
as
the
I
last
still
hymn.
test positive for COVID with fortunately
Jim
minor
Hanshaw,
symptoms.
who tested positive for COVID.
I consider Dorothy
Will be-
Brown our local
he was supposed
poet
to be here
laureate
to read
at
selections
UCH and
from
one of
Walt
my
Whitman,
many
but he
friends
has
and
them
mentors
on
I'm
a
blessed to
recording
have
for
in this
you.
congregation.
Selections from Walt Whitman.
She has personally edited a
It says the
I am
closing hymn,
thankful
but
to be
it's not
able to
the
recite
closing
my
hymn.
poem this morning,
It's
as
the
I
last
still
hymn.
test positive for COVID with fortunately
Jim
minor
Hanshaw,
symptoms.
who tested positive for COVID.
I consider Dorothy
Will be-
Brown our local
he was
poet
supposed to be here
laureate
to
at
read selections
UCH and
from
one of
Walt
my
Whitman,
many
but he
friends
has
and
them
mentors
on
I'm
a
blessed to
recording
have
for
in
you.
this congregation.
Selections from Walt Whitman.
She has personally edited a not one is respectable or unhappy over the whole earth. I have said that the soul is not more than the body, and I have said that the body is not more than the soul, and nothing, not God, is greater to one than oneself is. And whoever walks a furlong without sympathy walks to his own funeral dressed in a shroud. And I, or you, pocketless of a dime, may purchase the pick of the earth, and to glance with an eye or show a bean in its pod confounds the learning of all times. And there's no trade or employment, but the young man following it may become a hero. And there's no object so soft, but it makes a hub for the wheeled universe. And I say to any man or woman, let your soul stand cool and composed before a million universes. And I say to mankind, be not curious about God, for I, who am curious about each, am not curious about God. I hear and behold God in every object, yet understand God not in the least. Nor do I understand who there can be more wonderful than myself. Why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God every hour of the 24, and each moment then. In the faces of men and women I see God, and in my own face in the glass. I find letters from God dropped in the street, and every one is signed by God's name. And I leave them where they are, for I know that wheresoever I go, others will punctually come forever and ever.
Go out into the world now with an open heart and gratitude and thanksgiving.